Keep your hands where I can see them. Good. Step back toward me.
Not moving, officer. I'm right here.
Wrist behind your back. Slow. Cuff going on. Stay still.
I'm still.
Hear that click? It's secure. You're in custody. Lean on the hood for me.
You ever feel a badge turn a man blind before he even sees your face? That night on I-20 outside Atlanta, rain hammering the roof like it was trying to drown something, I learned exactly how heavy that blindness can get. Where are you watching this from right now? Drop it in the comments. And if you ever had to hold your breath during a conversation just to make it to the other side, yeah, you already know why I'm telling this. Stick around. Tomorrow's story hits even harder. It was one of those nights where the world felt like it was pressing down. The kind where the rain doesn't just fall. It weighs on everything it touches. I was driving my plain black Tahoe. Nothing flashy about it. Just a solid truck I'd paid off after 15 years of grinding through law school loans and late nights in the courtroom. The wipers were slapping back and forth, barely keeping up with the sheets of water pouring down the windshield. I had the radio off, just the steady thrum of tires on wet asphalt, and the occasional splash from a semi blasting past in the left lane. My mind was on Mama. She'd called earlier that evening, her voice raspy over the phone, saying her breathing was acting up again. The COPD had been getting worse, and she needed me to swing by her place in Decatur with some meds from the pharmacy. I wasn't rushing. Roads like that in the rain, you take your time. But I felt that pull, that quiet urgency in my chest, like a shadow stretching longer as the miles ticked by. The highway was mostly empty, just the glow of taillights fading into the haze ahead. I glanced at the dash clock, pushing midnight. My hands were steady on the wheel, calluses from years of gripping gavels and shaking hands in back rooms where deals got made or broken. But even after all that climbing, from public defender scraping by on nothing to chief judge sworn in just last week in a quiet ceremony that didn't make the papers yet, nights like this still carried that old weight, the kind that settles in your bones from growing up in places where your skin made you a question mark before you ever spoke a word. Then it happened. In the rearview mirror, a flash of blue and red pierced the darkness, swirling like angry ghosts in the rain. My heart didn't jump. It sank, slow and heavy, like an old stone settling into the riverbed. I eased off the gas, signaled right, and pulled over onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires as I came to a stop. The patrol car slid in behind me, lights still pulsing, turning the raindrops into streaks of color on my windows. I sat there for a second, hands at 10 and 2, breathing steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Daddy's words echoed faint in my head from back in '87 when I was just a kid watching him get pulled over for nothing on a sunny afternoon. Son, when they shine that light, they already made up their mind. Just breathe and stay alive. I rolled the window down a crack, enough to hear but not enough to let the downpour flood the cab. The officer approached slow, one hand on his holster, the other gripping a flashlight that cut through the night like a blade. The beam hit my eyes first, blinding, making me squint as water dripped from the brim of his hat. He was mid-40s, maybe, with a thick Georgia drawl that carried certainty like it was armor. I didn't catch his name tag right away. Rain blurred everything. But later, I'd learn it was Sergeant Harlan Tate. He stood there, rain soaking his uniform, peering in like he was already judging the contents of my soul. "Nice truck," he said, not as a compliment. His voice cut through the storm, flat and loaded. "Ain't seen you round here before. Step out." No evening, sir? No license and registration. Just that order, hanging in the air like a threat. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the breath catching just a bit, but I kept it level. "Evening, officer. Mind telling me why you pulled me over?" He didn't answer. Instead, he flicked the light around the interior of the Tahoe, lingering on the passenger seat where my briefcase sat, stuffed with court files and that fresh letter from the governor confirming my new role as chief judge. The rain pounded harder, drumming on the roof like fingers tapping impatient. I unbuckled slow, keeping my movements visible, and pushed the door open. Water hit me immediately, cold and relentless, soaking through my button-down shirt in seconds. I stepped out onto the shoulder, gravel shifting under my shoes, the chill seeping up through my soles. Sergeant Tate stood a little too close, his flashlight still in my face, making shadows dance across his features, hard lines around the eyes, a jaw set like he was chewing on something bitter. The air smelled of wet earth and exhaust, mixed with that faint metallic tang from the highway. My shirt clung to my skin, heavy and uncomfortable, but I stood straight, hands loose at my sides. No sudden moves. Breathe. "What's the problem?" I asked again, voice calm, though inside, that old shadow was stirring, the one that whispered about all the times this had happened before, to me, to Daddy, to folks I knew who'd never made it home. He tilted his head, water dripping from his hat brim, onto the ground between us. "Problem is, a truck like this out here at this hour raises questions." "Where you headed?" "Decatur," I said. "Visiting family." He snorted, a low sound that got lost in the rain. "Family, huh? And this your truck? Paid for?" I felt the weight press harder, that invisible load bearing down. My mind flickered back to the long hours in dingy offices defending people who looked like me, arguing against assumptions dressed up as evidence. To the day I passed the bar, Mama's proud smile through tears, her hands rough from cleaning houses to put me through school. And now, here, reduced again to a suspect because of the way the light hit my face. "Yes, sir, it's mine. Bought it years ago." He circled around me slow, boots splashing in puddles, light sweeping over the Tahoe's body like he was inspecting for flaws. The rain kept coming, relentless, turning the shoulder into a muddy slick. I stood there, arms out slightly, feeling the cold trickle down my back, soaking into my belt. The highway hummed distant, cars whooshing by without slowing, their headlights cutting through the storm like indifferent eyes. "Hands where I can see 'em," he said suddenly, voice sharper now. "This vehicle matches a description." I knew it was a lie. He hadn't even run the plates yet, hadn't called anything in. But I raised my hands slow, palms out, rain pooling in them. The shadow in my chest deepened, breath coming shorter. But I held it. Daddy's voice again. "Just breathe. Stay alive." He stepped closer, the flashlight beam steady on my chest now. I could smell the coffee on his breath, mixed with the storm. His hand moved to his belt, pulling out the cuffs with a metallic clink that cut through the noise. No backup yet, no radio chatter, just him and me in the downpour. The cold metal touched my skin, biting into the old scar tissue on my wrists, remnants from a childhood fall that never quite healed right. Click! The first cuff locked. Rain dripped off his hat onto my neck, a slow, icy trail that made me shiver despite everything. The second cuff snapped shut with a finality that echoed in my ears, tighter than necessary, digging into flesh that already carried its share of history. Water from Sergeant Tate's hat kept trailing down, mixing with the sweat breaking on my forehead despite the chill. He spun me around without a word, pressing my chest against the slick hood of the Tahoe, the metal cold and unyielding under my shirt, like it was absorbing the storm's anger. Rain pelted my back, running in rivulets down my spine, pooling at my waistband. I could feel the gravel shifting beneath my feet, unstable, mirroring the way this whole stop had tilted into something darker. "Spread your legs," he barked, his boot nudging my ankle wider. His hands started the pat down, rough and invasive, palms slapping against my pockets, fingers probing seams as if expecting contraband to materialize. The flashlight beam bounced around us, casting jagged shadows on the wet pavement, turning the scene into a fractured nightmare. The smell of soaked asphalt rose sharp, mingling with the faint oil residue from passing trucks, and underneath it all, the metallic bite of fear. Not mine, but the kind that hung in the air when power flexed without reason. I kept my eyes forward, staring at the hood's reflection of swirling lights, my breath fogging the surface in short bursts. No yelling, no resistance, just that internal rhythm I'd honed over years. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale slow. It was the same count I used in chambers when tempers flared, or back in my public defender days, facing down prosecutors who saw defendants as statistics. But here, out in the open with the highway roaring indifferent behind us, it felt heavier, like each breath was pulling against chains. He finished the frisk, stepping back with a grunt, but not before giving my shoulder a shove that pinned me harder against the truck. "How's a guy like you swing a ride like this anyway?" His tone was casual poison, the kind that pretended to chat while twisting the knife. "Job must pay real good. What you do? Deliver packages or something?" The words landed like expected blows, but they stirred that quiet ember inside me, the one forged from nights poring over case law by lamplight while Mama scrubbed floors in office buildings downtown. She'd come home bone-tired, hands cracked from chemicals, but always with that fierce whisper, "You keep going, boy. Don't let 'em dim your light." I'd climbed from those shadows, arguing appeals in stuffy courtrooms, winning acquittals for folks who'd been written off, earning the robe that symbolized justice. And just last week, the governor's quiet nod, making me chief judge, a role where I could finally steer the system from the top. Yet here I was, face pressed to cold steel, reduced to a stereotype without them uttering the word. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I felt the rain's rhythm on my skin, each drop a reminder of endurance. "I work in the courts," I said finally, voice even, though the ember flickered hotter. "And this stop, there's no cause for it." He chuckled, a wet, mocking sound that got swallowed by the storm. "Courts, huh? Like a janitor or something? Nah, this truck screams something else." He circled the Tahoe again, slower this time, his boots splashing deliberate in the puddles. The lights from his cruiser painted everything red and blue, pulsing like a headache. I spotted movement across the median, a semi-idling, its driver silhouetted in the cab, phone held up, capturing the whole mess through the downpour. Good. Let it record. Every frame mattered. Then came the backup. Tires hissed on wet pavement as another patrol car pulled up sharp, doors slamming. The partner was younger, early 30s maybe, with that eager edge, eyes narrowing as he jogged over, rain slicking his hair flat. He didn't ask for details, just locked onto me, nodding at Tate like they'd done this dance before. "This the one?" he asked, voice carrying over the wind. "Yeah," Tate replied, wiping water from his face. "Claims it's his. But look at it. Too clean for this hour, this road." The younger one, his tag read Officer Hale, stepped in close, his breath visible in the cold air. They flanked me now, one on each side, the hood still digging into my ribs. Hale's hands joined the search, rougher, fingers jabbing into my sides like he was testing for weakness. "Empty your pockets," he ordered, ignoring the fact Tate had already done it. I complied slow, pulling out my wallet, keys, the pharmacy bag with Mama's inhaler refills. Rain soaked the paper, ink starting to run. Hale snatched the wallet, flipping it open without care, his light scanning my license. But he didn't really look. His eyes flicked back to me, suspicious, like the photo didn't match the narrative in his head. "See?" Tate said, leaning in. "Doesn't add up. Guy out here alone, fancy truck, headed to family. Sounds like a run to me." The accusation hung there, unspoken specifics but clear intent. My heartbeat thrummed louder now, a muffled drum in my chest, syncing with the wipers on the idling cruisers. I thought of the bench, the gavel's weight in my hand, decisions that altered lives. How many times had I reviewed body cam footage, spotting the overreach, the bias creeping in. Now I was living it, the irony bitter as the rain on my lips. Hale tossed my wallet onto the hood, where it slid a bit in the water. "Turn around fully," he said, grabbing my arm to twist me. The cuffs pulled taut, sending a sharp twinge up my shoulders. They pushed me back against the truck, the grill pressing into my thighs. Tate's radio crackled to life, but he ignored it, focusing on me. "You got nothing to say? Most folks start explaining by now." I met his gaze, water blurring my vision, but held steady. "I've said what needs saying. This is unlawful." Hale laughed outright, a bark that cut the night. "Unlawful? Listen to this guy. You watch too many cop shows, or what?" The ember inside flared, but I tamped it down, counting breaths again. Flash to my first big win as a defender. A young black kid pulled over just like this. Suspicious vehicle, turning into planted evidence. I'd shredded their case and cross, watching the officers squirm. That victory had fueled me, pushed me higher, but the system didn't change overnight. It just shifted the shadows. Mama's voice again. "They'll try to break you quiet like. Don't let 'em." Tate wasn't done. He popped the driver's door open, the interior light spilling out warm against the storm. My briefcase sat there, leather worn from years of carrying burdens. He reached in, fingers grazing the latch. "Gonna take a quick look. Inventory, you know. Standard." My pulse quickened, but voice stayed level. "That's a search. You need cause or consent. You have neither." He paused, hand inside now, rummaging. The sound of papers shuffling mixed with the rain's patter. Hale kept watch on me, his stance wide, hand hovering near his taser. Across the highway, the semi's horn blared distant, but the phone light stayed steady, witness in the dark. Tate pulled out a file, flipping it careless, water spotting the edges. "Court stuff? Yeah, right. Probably fake." Then his elbow bumped the console, knocking something loose. It was the framed photo of Mama from her last hospital stay, smiling weak but determined, tubes in her nose. It tumbled to the floor mat with a crack, glass splintering on impact. Something in me shifted, not breaking but solidifying, like molten iron cooling to steel. The rain kept pouring, but now it felt like a veil, separating the world into before and after that sound. He straightened, smirking. "Oops, clumsy me." But his eyes said different, intentional, testing limits. Hale shifted uneasy, glancing at Tate. "We good here?" Tate nodded, slamming the door shut. "Yeah, radioing for tow. Suspected stolen. Let's get this off the road." The radio hissed as he keyed it, voice steady over the storm. "Dispatch, need a tow on I-20 eastbound. Possible hot vehicle, detainee in custody." I stood there, cuffs biting deeper, the cracked glass echoing in my mind, rain still falling relentless, as if trying to erode the edges of this unfolding wrong. As the tow truck's winch groaned into position, its yellow lights cutting fresh swaths through the curtain of water, my phone vibrated insistent against my thigh, a lifeline humming in the chaos. I'd kept the recorder app running silent from the moment those lights flared in my mirror. Habit born from too many close calls, a digital shield against the unpredictable. Tate and Hale exchanged smirks, the younger one nodding toward my pocket. "Answer it if you want. Might be your lawyer calling to bail you out." His laugh was forced, edged with the thrill of control, but I caught the undercurrent, that cocky assumption this was all wrapping up their way. I shifted careful, cuffs limiting my reach, and fished the phone out with bound hands. The screen glowed under the rain's assault. Caller ID flashing. Governor's office. I hit speaker, holding it up so the voice could carry over the mechanical whine and persistent downpour. No games, just facts unfolding. "Judge Ellis." The chief of staff's tone cut clear, professional urgency laced through. "We've been trying to reach you. Governor's got you slotted for that 8 a.m. emergency panel tomorrow, handling the circuit's backlog reforms. Congrats again on the chief judge appointment, The swearing in might have been low-key, but it's already making waves. The words hung there, amplified by the speaker, slicing through the storm like a gavel's crack. Tate's smirk evaporated mid-breath, his face slackening, color leaching out as if the rain had washed it away. He froze mid-step, hand still on the tow cable, eyes dating from the phone to me like he'd misread a verdict. Hale muttered low, almost a whisper lost to the wind. "Wait, Judge?" His posture crumpled, that eager stance deflating, replaced by a wide-eyed scramble for comprehension. Silence blanketed us then, broken only by the idling engine's rumble and the rain's unyielding tattoo on metal and earth. I lowered the phone slow, tucking it back, my voice emerging, quiet but unyielding, a steady undercurrent against their sudden turbulence. "Might be a good time to actually look at my ID. It's in the wallet you tossed on the hood." Hale fumbled for it, hands slick and trembling now, flipping through with none of the earlier disregard. Tate hovered close, peering over his shoulder, breath coming in shallow hitches. Out came the bar card, the judicial badge, and folded neat, the commission letter from the governor himself, ink fresh, seal embossed, confirming my elevation to Chief Judge of the Superior Court Circuit. The paper wilted slightly under droplets, but the words stood bold. Authority in print, undeniable. Hale's fingers went still, the wallet dangling limp. This is real?" His question wasn't for me. It was a plea to Tate, who backed up a step, rubbing his jaw like it could erase the miscalculation. The tow operator paused his work, sensing the shift, his radio crackling unanswered in the cab. I didn't crow. Triumph wasn't the flavor here. Instead, a bone-deep weariness settled in, the kind that accumulates like sediment over decades, the raids on our childhood home when I was 12, officers pounding the door for my brother who'd done nothing but exist in the wrong neighborhood, the sidelong glances in law school halls, the subtle barriers even after the robe. But threaded through it was a release, a profound uncurling in my lungs, air flowing freer as if the storm itself had parted. No more counting breaths to survive. Now they came natural, reclaiming space. The chief of staff's voice echoed faint in my memory, a pivot point where the scales tipped. Tate cleared his throat, voice cracking on the attempt at recovery. "Look, we didn't know," but the radio interrupted. Dispatch's tone sharper than before, laced with overheard intel from the call. "Units on I-20, stand by. Supervisor en route. Hold position." Minutes stretched, the tow winch idle now, its hook dangling like a question mark. Headlights pierced the haze from the west, another vehicle approaching deliberate, no sirens but purpose evident in the steady advance. The captain's unmarked sedan pulled up nose to tail with the cruisers, door swinging open to reveal a figure in his 50s, build solid from years on the line, face etched with the weight of oversight. He strode over, coat flapping in the gusts, eyes sweeping the scene, me cuffed against the Tahoe, the scattered wallet contents, the cracked photo frame visible through the window, body cams whirring impartial. "What's this?" His voice was forged iron, no room for evasion. He locked onto Tate first, then Hale, reading the guilt in their averted gazes. Tate straightened, words tumbling out defensive. "Captain, it was a routine pullover. Vehicle matched a, well, we thought, suspicious activity. He didn't cooperate fully." Hale nodded frantic, adding, "Yeah, resisted the search. We were just securing the scene." The captain's gaze shifted to me, recognition flickering, perhaps from judicial circles or just the badge now in plain view. He exhaled sharp, turning back. "Uncuff him, right now." The order landed like a verdict, no appeal. Tate hesitated, key in hand, fumbling the lock as if his fingers had forgotten the motion. The cuffs released with a reluctant click, metal retreating from skin marked red and indented. I flexed my wrists subtle, circulation returning in pins and needles, but held my ground, expression composed amid the unraveling. Save the excuses for internal affairs. The captain cut in as Tate opened his mouth again. I see the photo damage, the unauthorized rummage, and dispatch caught that call. Judge, Chief Judge, this isn't a mix-up. It's a mess you made. Hale shuffled feet, mumbling about procedure, but the captain waved it off, directing his attention to the tow operator. Unhook it. This vehicle's going nowhere but with its owner. The winch reversed with a mechanical sigh, cable slackening as the Tahoe settled back firm on the shoulder. I retrieved my wallet, tucking the document safe, the governor's letter, a quiet talisman now exposed. The weariness lingered, but so did that exhale. Deeper now, drawing in the night's damp air, laced with exhaust and possibility. Tate and Hale stood sidelined, faces a study in reversal, authority stripped, replaced by the raw exposure of error. The captain pulled me aside briefly, voice lowered. Apologies, don't fix this, but they're due. We'll handle it from here. I nodded. No elaboration needed. The machinery of accountability was already turning. As he coordinated the wrap-up, barking orders into his radio, I leaned against the Tahoe's door, the metal now a support rather than a restraint, watching the storm ease slightly, drops thinning to a persistent mist. I nodded. No elaboration needed. The machinery of accountability was already turning. As he coordinated the wrap-up, barking orders into his radio, I leaned against the Tahoe's door, the metal now a support rather than a restraint, watching the storm ease slightly, drops thinning to a persistent mist. The mist hung low now, softening the edges of the cruiser's lights into hazy halos as the tow operator finished unhooking the Tahoe and drove off empty-handed. I stayed leaned against the driver's door for a long moment, letting the night air settle against my damp skin, the ache in my wrists fading into a dull throb. The captain stepped away from Tate and Hale to speak low into his radio, coordinating statements, evidence logs, the paperwork that would turn this roadside mistake into official record. He glanced back once, gave a small nod, acknowledgement, not apology, but enough to signal the wheels were turning the right direction. I opened the door slow, slid into the seat, the leather cool and familiar under me. The interior still carried that faint scent of Mama's favorite lavender air freshener, mixed with the wet dog smell the rain had dragged in. I reached down, careful, and lifted the cracked photo frame from the floor mat. Shards of glass glittered in the dome light. Mama's smile remained intact behind the fracture lines, her eyes steady even through the damage. I brushed the biggest pieces off gently, set the frame on the passenger seat like it was fragile evidence of its own. The inhaler refills lay beside it. Pharmacy bag soggy, but contents safe. Small mercies. Outside, Tate stood rigid beside his cruiser, arms crossed tight across his chest as if holding himself together. Hale paced a short circle, phone pressed to his ear, voice too quiet to catch, but body language screaming panic. The captain returned, clipboard in hand now, water beading on the plastic cover. "We'll need your formal statement when you're ready," he said, tone measured. "Not tonight. Get to your mother. We'll follow up tomorrow. Proper channels." I met his eyes through the open window. "I appreciate that." No more words needed. The rest would play out in depositions, hearings, filings. I closed the door, started the engine. The Tahoe purred awake, headlights slicing forward through the thinning mist, illuminating wet tire tracks on the shoulder like scars left behind. Pulling back onto I-20 felt almost surreal. Same road, same rain, but the weight had shifted. The dashboard clock glowed 1:17 a.m. Mama would still be awake, probably sitting in her recliner with the oxygen concentrator humming, waiting for the sound of my key in the lock. I kept the speed steady, wipers sweeping clean arcs across the glass, each pass wiping away a little more of the night's residue. The highway stretched quiet now, most traffic gone. Just the occasional, semi-rumbling pass like distant thunder. My mind drifted, not to replaying the stop frame by frame, though those images would linger for years, but to the longer arc, to the kid I'd been, watching Daddy pull over on a bright Saturday afternoon in '87 because his old Buick looked suspicious in a nice suburb. To the courtroom victories that had felt like small corrections in a crooked system. To the robe I'd worn for the first time last week. Heavy silk settling on my shoulders, the quiet power of sitting above the fray while still feeling every ripple beneath. And now this. Not a victory in the loud, triumphant sense, no cheering crowds, no viral clip ending with applause, just the slow, grinding machinery of consequence finally engaging. Tate and Hale would face suspension pending investigation, then likely termination once the body cam audio, dash footage, and that trucker's cell phone video made their way through channels. The department would issue statements about isolated incident and ongoing training. But the settlement, when it came, would speak louder. Federal Section 1983 claim already forming in my head. Unlawful detention, racial profiling, excessive force in the pat-down, property damage, emotional distress. Numbers floated. High six figures at minimum, maybe pushing 8 or 9 once pain and suffering calculations landed. Most of it wouldn't stay with me. I'd direct the bulk to civil rights nonprofits, Mama's long-term care, scholarships for kids from neighborhoods like the one I grew up in. The money was never the point. The record was. I exited toward Decatur, streets narrowing, sodium lamps casting orange pools on wet pavement. Mama's house appeared at the end of the block, porch light burning steady like a beacon. I parked in the driveway, killed the engine, sat for a beat listening to the tick of a cooling metal and the soft hiss of mist on the hood. My phone buzzed once, text from the chief of staff. Safe arrival, panel still on for 8, call if you need to push. I typed back quick, home now, see you at 8. Then silence. I grabbed the pharmacy bag, the damaged frame, stepped out. The air smelled cleaner here, less exhaust, more pine and wet grass. Up the walk, key in the lock, door opening to the familiar warmth of the house, oxygen machine's rhythmic pulse, faint scent of menthol rub, the low murmur of a late-night gospel station she kept on for company. Mama looked up from her recliner, eyes bright despite the fatigue etched around them. "Took you long enough, boy." Her voice raspy but teasing. Then she saw my soaked shirt, the way I carried myself careful. What happened? I set the bag and frame on the side table, knelt beside her chair, took her thin hand in mine. Got pulled over. Rain made everything take longer. I left the rest for daylight. She didn't need the wait tonight. She studied my face, thumb brushing over the red marks on my wrist. They hurt you? Not really. A half-truth, but the kind that protects. Just delayed me. She squeezed my fingers, strength surprising for how frail she looked. You still got here. That's what counts. I stayed there a while, head resting against the arm of the recliner, listening to her breathing even out as the oxygen did its work. The house settled around us, creaks of old wood, distant drip from the gutter, the soft tick of the wall clock. Outside, the rain had finally eased to nothing, leaving only the drip-drip from eaves and the promise of clearer skies by morning. Later, after she'd drifted off and I'd changed into dry clothes, I sat at the kitchen table, with a cup of chamomile gone cold, staring at the cracked photo. The fracture ran diagonal across her cheek, but her eyes still held that same unyielding light. I thought about karma, not the flashy, instant kind people post about online, but the slow-turning kind that grinds fine. Tate and Hale had built careers on assumptions. Tonight those assumptions cracked like that glass. The system wouldn't fix itself overnight, but it had bent just enough tonight to let truth slip through. I didn't need the gavel in my hand to feel the balance shift. The road back to Atlanta would still carry shadows, but I'd drive it tomorrow with the same steady hands, same measured breath. Because some fights aren't won in one night. They're carried forward, quiet and relentless until the weight finally tips. If this story landed anywhere close to your own experience, or made you think about the ones you haven't shared yet, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you believe justice shouldn't need a title or a badge to be seen, share this. Hit subscribe if you want more of these raw pieces. They keep coming because the work isn't done. I turned off the kitchen light, carried Mama's photo to the mantel, set it careful among the others. Then I stepped to the window, looked out at the quiet street, the first faint gray of dawn brushing the horizon. The night had passed. The record remained. And that, for now, was enough. I turned off the kitchen light, carried Mama's photo to the mantel, set it careful among the others. Then I stepped to the window, looked out at the quiet street, the first faint gray of dawn brushing the horizon. The night had passed. The record remained. And that, for now, was enough.